The topic for discussion is cerebellum. Divided this lecture into two. The topic 1 and 2 will be doing with the first part. The learning objectives are by the end of this lecture, you must be able to describe cerebellum and its motor function, enumerate different input and outputs, neuronal circuits of the cerebellum, and enlist functions of cerebellum in overall. So cerebellum is usually called as a silent area of the brain. Why is it so? It's because electrical excitation of cerebellum does not cause any conscious sensation and rarely causes any motor movement. However, if we remove cerebellum, then our movements become highly abnormal. So cerebellum is very important and vital in specific type of muscular activity, for example, running, typing, playing a piano, and even talking. And if we lose this part of the brain, so then we lose all the coordination between different muscular activities. So, for the sake of this lecture, we'll be sticking to two types of division of cerebellum, that is anatomical and functional or physiological division of the cerebellum. For you guys, from the anatomical point of view, we have anterior, posterior lobes of a cerebellum, and you can see here this is the anterior lobe, posterior lobe, which are joined at the vermis, and then through by the horizontal fissure, and the small flocculonodular lobe. So these are the anatomical division of cerebellum. Now you can see inside the structure of the cerebellum, you can see the white matter and the outside the gray matter. Now arbor vitae, as you must have done in anatomy, it is the distinctive tree pattern of the white matter. It is also called as the tree of life. If you guys recall from that movie Avatar, if somebody have seen it, there was a tree of life in that. More or less the functions and the physical appearance is same as the cerebellar white matter. So the gray matter of the cerebellum we can further divide into cerebellar cortex and then the nuclei. We have the dentate, fastigial, interposed, emboliform, and globose. And from every nucleus we have different tracks that are going to that we are going to do in the later lecture. And the white matter, which is called as the arbor vitae. The different nuclei, the cerebellar cortex, the dentate nuclei, the fastigial nucleus, and then the globus nucleus, and then the emboliform nucleus, and the typical tree-like pattern of the white matter of the cerebellum, which is called as the arbor vitae. Now these are the anatomical lobes. By two horizontal fissures, we have an anterior lobe, a posterior lobe, and then a flocculonodular lobe. This is again the depiction of the same fissures that divide anatomically cerebellum into anterior, posterior, and the flocculonodular lobe. Now, much of our interest is the functional part of the cerebellum, that is the physiological parts of the cerebellum, and we can see we have divided this into longitudinal sections. The midline is called as the vermis, and then lateral to the vermis we have the intermediate zone or hemisphere, we can also call it, and then the most lateral we have the lateral zone of the hemisphere. Now each hemisphere has typical functions. The vermis has typical functions, the intermediate and the lateral part of the cerebellum has its so much of the text written over here in these slides is for you to go through it. I will just be going through the much of the diagrams and explaining them, because too much of voice recording makes these files so difficult to upload. Now, this is like we did, if you guys remember from this sensory system and the motor system, we did that homunculus, motor homunculus, and sensory homunculus. So this is the typical somatosensory projection areas in the cerebellar cortex. Now you can see midline structure, which is called as the vermis. Now you can see which parts of the bodies are mostly represented in these areas. It is usually the axial skeleton, the neck, and the thorax, you can see. And then this is the intermediate zone. So intermediate zone, a lot of representation it gets from the distal part of your body. For example, your fingers, your toes, your legs, your distal part of your bodies. And you can see the lateral zone almost having no projection from the distal part or even the proximal part of the body, because much of the lateral zone is in direct contact with the cortex and the signals arriving from the cortex or other areas of the brain directly, so it has no such representation. So coming the physiological divisions, we can divide it into vestibulocerebellum, the spinocerebellum and the cerebrocerebellum. And usually in your exam you usually get the questions by these divisions, like what is the function of the vestibulocerebellum, or in MCQs you can get these terms are usually used, so must be acquainted with these terms. So as the name indicates, vestibulocerebellum, control of equilibrium, of course, because it is in direct contact with the vestibular nuclei, as the name indicates, and it consists principally of the small flocculonodular cerebellar lobes that lie under the posterior cerebellum and adjacent portion of the vermis. It provides neural circuit for most of the body's equilibrium. The spinocerebellum. Now, spinocerebellum, you can see the vermis, which we said had representation from the axial part of the skeleton. So it would be depicting the coordinating the movements of the trunk, shoulder, neck, and hips. And the intermediate zone, which we said usually gets from the distal part of your body, usually the hand, fingers, feet, and toes. So it is usually provides the circuitry for coordinating mainly movements of the distal portion of the limbs, especially the hand and the fingers. The lateral zone of the cerebellum, these are the larger zones that lies lateral to the intermediate zone. It virtually receives all of its input from the cerebral motor cortex and adjacent premotor and the sensory motor cortex of the cerebellum, and it transmits its output signals in an upward direction back to the brain, functioning in the feedback manner. So it provides basically a motor imagery of movements that is to be performed, coordinating between the cortex and the cerebellum. Now coming to the input and the output signals from the cerebellum, these are important. So the input from other parts of the brain and then from the periphery, we can divide into these two aspects. From the other part of the brain, the most important are the corticopontocerebellar, the olivo, reticulo, and the vestibulocerebellar that we are going to show in a single diagram. Things will be clear to you. And from the periphery, we have the spinocerebellar tracts. Guys, please go through the spinocerebellar tracts. I will just be discussing some highlights of them. These are important tracts to go through, so don't skip them. So now coming to you can go through these written slides. These have been written for your, for summarizing things which has been taken from Guyton and Sherwood. So you can go through them, the tracts from the vermis, intermediate, and the cerebellar cortex. I would just making things easy for you. So coming to the I told you one of the most important one is the corticopontocerebellar, and then you see there are three peduncles, and these peduncles usually connect the midbrain pons and the medulla to the cerebellum. You call them superior cerebellar peduncle, middle cerebellar peduncle, and inferior cerebellar peduncle. So you can see the corticopontocerebellar tract usually entering through the middle cerebellar peduncle and supplying both hemispheres of the cerebellum. And then you have the vestibulo and the olivocerebellar tract and the reticulocerebellar tract. They usually enter through the inferior cerebellar peduncle and then usually supplies all the anterior and the posterior lobes of the cerebellum. So these are the principal afferent tracts to the cerebellum. The dorsal, the spinocerebellar tracts, in which we have further divided into dorsal and the ventral, we are just going to do in a pontocerebellar, usually from the premotor cortex, and goes through the middle cerebellar peduncle into the contralateral cerebellum. And then the inferior olive, basically it goes through the inferior cerebellar peduncle to all parts of the cerebellum. Now that were from the other parts of the brain, right? So now the input pathway from the periphery. So go through these slides where I have written in detail from where, what are the sensory receptors involved and where from the signals are, it is going to come. Just going in short through the diagrams. This diagram has been taken from your guide, and go through it. Diagram in which for my convenience and your convenience, I've just done all the three tracts which are important, that is the ventral, the cuneo-cerebellar, and then the dorsal cerebellar tracts. So these are the spinocerebellar tracts can be further divided into posterior spinocerebellar tract, that is which one is shown in the green over here, And then you have an anterior spinocerebellar tract that which ways have been depicted in blue over here. And then you have the cunocerebellar tract, which is you can see in yellow over here. There's yellow or orange, I don't know, but it seems yellow, I guess. So for every tract, as has been already told and explained, you must know where the first order neuron is, where the second order neuron is, and then where the third order neuron is. So coming again, one of the important factor for this spinocerebellar tract is that it transmits signal at the fastest rate that you can imagine, that is 120 meters per second anywhere in the brain. Then it is called as posterior spinocerebellar tract because it usually occupies the posterior position in the lateral right column, and this is called as anterior because it usually occupies the anterior position in the lateral right column. And then you have the cunocerebellar tract. Now, as already mentioned, these tracts come from the periphery. So from where? From the periphery. Of course, we said the cerebellum is usually important in the muscular movements for the distal and for your trunk muscles and for your distal hand, feet, and all these things. So usually the receptors that are involved are either muscle spindle or whatever your receptors are, basically muscle spindle for the action for the muscle movement. So first of all, we will do the posterior spinocerebellar tract. You can see this in green. The first order neuron lies in the dorsal root ganglion. This is the first order neuron, and the second order neuron, it would come into this the spinal cord gray horn, and the second order neuron usually lies in the nucleus of the Clark, or it is also called as the dorsalis nucleus, and therefore the dorsal spinocerebellar tract, the name given into it. But you must remember that these nuclei, they usually just lie at the level of C8 and L3, and they do not lie above these levels. So if the fibers are coming above C8, then these fibers would be coming through the cunocerebellar tract. If the fibers are coming from C8 to L3 level, they would be coming from the posterior spinocerebellar tract and the anterior spinocerebellar tract. The only difference between the posterior and the anterior is that the posterior is uncrossed tract. For example, the first order neuron lies in the dorsal root ganglion, the second in the nucleus of Clark, and then you can see it crosses over on the same side to occupy the posterior spinocerebellar tract in the lateral right column, and then it ascends upward through the medulla and would enter into the cerebellum through the inferior cerebellar peduncle. This is at a lower level, that is C8 to L3. And then the cunocerebellar, if the level is high up, for example, from your trunk area, from your thorax, they won't be going through posterior spinocerebellar tract, they would be going to the cunocerebellar tract. The first order neuron still lies in the dorsal root ganglion. The second order neuron, however, it does not synapse on the nucleus of Clark since it's not available over there. So it would ascend up into the medulla, and the second order neurons in the accessory cuneate nucleus, and therefore the cunocerebellar tract name is given to it, and it will also ascend upward through the inferior cerebellar peduncle into the cerebellum. The third order would be in the cerebellum itself. Now the anterior spinocerebellar tract also takes the fibers from CA to level L3. It would go, the first order neuron lie there in the dorsal root ganglion, the second order neuron lamina 7, the nucleus of Clark. However, the fibers would just then cross over and then would go on the opposite side to occupy the anterior area of the lateral white column, and then they would ascend up to the level of the midbrain, and then at the midbrain they come down, and then they would go through the superior cerebellar peduncle into the cerebellum. Now you can see these blue, the anterior spinocerebellar tract has some fibers then leave again through the middle cerebellar peduncle, cross over, and then supply the contralateral cerebellum. So it basically supplies both sides of the cerebellum, and it is a cross track. It crosses at the level of the spinal cord. So this is one of the important aspect. So these are the spinocerebellar tracts. You must know them. You must know the levels. You must know the first, second, and third order neuron. I hope things are clear in this. So now, as we have different nuclei, that is the fastigial, interposed, and dentate nucleus, which emboliform and globose and some others. But for the sake of discussion, and these are the important you can see the output signals from the dentate nucleus and the fastigious nucleus as a fastigio-reticular tract, and then the from the dentate nucleus through the superior cerebellar peduncle to the higher areas of the brain. So Vermis function, equilibrium and postural attitudes, intermediate zone through the interposed nucleus, usually function is coordination and reciprocal contraction of agonist-antagonist muscles, for example, hands and the fingers. The lateral zone, usually the nucleus involved is the dentate nucleus to the cerebellar cortex, of course, through the relay or relaying in the thalamus, and the function is planning and coordination of the sequential movements. Now, that was pretty much, we are over with our first lecture of the cerebellum. And now the things that are important from exam point of view, I told you already, are the spinocerebellar tracts, the different nuclei of the cerebellum, and the different functions of the cerebellum, division of cerebellum into anatomical and physiological aspects, and the functions that they perform. So this is the assignment for you guys. This is one of recall, as you can also say it, because we have done the tracts. So it is one of the assignment. The lesion of the posterior white column, that is fasciculus gracilis and cuneatus, cause the loss of proprioception, fine touch, and vibration on the same side of the body, whereas the lesion of the medial lemniscus cause the loss of sensation on opposite side of the body. Explain why it is so. Just piece of a cake. You have done it already. Make whatever is feasible for you. PowerPoint, Word, taking picture. But kindly all send your assignments to CR, Mr. Asad. I don't know. I guess your name is Asad, or if I'm not wrong. So you just send me in a closed format, in a single format, because I'm so confused still checking your previous assignments, where the students have sent me assignments like 4 times. Sorry, ma'am, this is no attachment, incomplete attachment, now complete attachment, but I forgot this assignment. So I'm really confused. I'm still checking those. So this is pretty much the end of this lecture, and we'll be doing the Purkinje cell system, the role of climbing in mossy fibers, and things, abnormalities associated with cerebellum in our next lecture.